The jealous stepdaughter sneakily fed me peanuts during our honeymoon, sending me to the ER. Now she's panicking, threatening to drop out of college because her dad cut off her financial support after her prank. I, a 44-year-old woman, got married to my boyfriend Jeff, 48 years old, last month. He also has a daughter from his previous marriage, Addison, 18 years old. I'm not sure why, but it seems like Addison has never liked me. Jeff and I started dating 4 years ago, and we had some mutual friends who thought we'd be great together, so they introduced us. I was also previously married but no kids, and my divorce was finalized 5 years ago. My divorce wasn't bad. My ex-husband and I just realized we weren't in love anymore, and we were more like friends and partners, so we decided to part amicably. We didn't speak ill of each other, but we didn't keep in touch after that either. Jeff had also been married before, but unfortunately, his wife passed away when Addison was just 7. Since then, Jeff had a few relationships, but none of them were serious. So, we both stayed single for a long time until our mutual friends decided to set us up, which ended up being one of the best decisions of our lives. I've never had any problems in relationships, except for the usual small stuff, and we get along very well. He understands me, and I understand him. The only real issue in our relationship, however, is Addison. I'm not saying I have a problem with her, but she has always made me feel like she doesn't like me and thinks her dad deserves better. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It just means she's protective of her father, which I understand. But she acts as though I'm not good enough for him, often giving me strange looks or making snide remarks that make me feel very uncomfortable. I'm not sure if that's really her way of showing respect for her father, but it's certainly not easy to deal with. When Jeff and I first started dating, I mentioned this issue a few times, asking him if Addison treated his previous girlfriends the same way. As I expected, Jeff told me that whenever he brought other women home, Addison would act the same way. He talked to her multiple times, trying to get her to stop doing it, but it just kept happening. As time went on, I learned to ignore Addison's passive-aggressive behavior, hoping it would fade away once we got married. I believed that with time, she would come to accept me as part of her family. Unfortunately, it didn't quite turn out that way. Our honeymoon was supposed to be a romantic getaway, just the two of us, Jeff and me. However, things took an unexpected and unpleasant turn when Addison decided to play a prank on me. During a dinner out one evening, she slyly slipped a few peanuts into my food. At first, I didn't think much of it, until I started feeling a familiar tightness in my throat. I'm severely allergic to peanuts, and I carry an epinephrine injector with me everywhere for emergencies. But in my distracted state, I hadn't noticed what she'd done until it was too late. By the time I realized the reaction was happening, I could feel my throat closing up, and I immediately started to panic. I managed to get to my phone and texted Jeff, who rushed back to the restaurant. My throat was swelling fast, and I was struggling to breathe. It was terrifying. Thankfully, Jeff arrived just in time and administered my epinephrine. He quickly called an ambulance, and I was rushed to the ER. The whole situation was incredibly stressful, and I was in shock. The doctor said that I had narrowly avoided a full-blown anaphylactic shock, which could have been fatal. I don't think Jeff or I spoke much on the ride to the hospital. His face was a mix of shock and concern, but it wasn't until later that night, after I had recovered, that he finally confronted Addison about what had happened. Addison was not apologetic in the slightest. In fact, she claimed that it was just a silly joke, and I should lighten up. Jeff lost his temper. He told Addison that her actions were not just cruel but dangerous, and that he was deeply disappointed in her. He then made it clear that he would not be supporting her financially anymore. She was expected to take responsibility for her actions and understand the consequences. For the first time, Jeff stood up to her. Addison was furious. She stormed off, and for the next few days, she refused to speak to either of us. The tension was unbearable, and the honeymoon that had started with so much promise turned into one of the worst experiences of my life. Now, a few weeks later, Addison is in full meltdown mode. She's been threatening to drop out of college because she's no longer receiving financial support from Jeff. She claims that it's unfair and that we're punishing her for a small mistake. She's been calling him nonstop, trying to guilt him into changing his mind, but Jeff is standing firm. He has told her that she needs to learn responsibility and maturity, and that actions have consequences. I never wanted to be the cause of a rift between Jeff and his daughter, but I can't deny that her actions have deeply shaken me. I'm still trying to process everything. I understand that being a parent to a grown child is difficult, but her complete lack of empathy for my health and safety makes it hard to see how we can move forward. Jeff and I have had some deep conversations about all of this, and he's trying to navigate his relationship with Addison while still being a good partner to me. I'm just not sure where things will go from here. Will Addison eventually come around? Or will this be the beginning of a long-term divide between us? For now, we're focused on getting through this tough period, but the road ahead feels uncertain. I know one thing for sure. Addison's prank could have cost me my life, and that's something that can never be forgotten or forgiven easily. The aftermath of the incident was emotionally taxing. Addison's actions were difficult to ignore, especially when I saw how her relationship with Jeff was shifting. The once strong father-daughter bond that had existed between them seemed to be fraying at the edges. For the first time, I noticed a change in Jeff's demeanor. He wasn't just angry with her. He was hurt, deeply hurt by her actions and the lack of remorse she had shown. In the weeks following the peanut prank incident, I noticed that Jeff was growing increasingly distant. It wasn't just because of Addison's behavior, but also because of how the situation was affecting our relationship. He had been torn between his role as a father and his loyalty to me as his wife. It was clear that his loyalty was with me, and I could see the strain that was putting on him. At first, I tried to offer him space and understanding. I didn't want to push him into making decisions he wasn't ready to make. But as time went on, I realized that we couldn't move forward unless we had a clear and honest conversation about Addison, our relationship, and what our future looked like. I needed to understand where Jeff stood and what role I would play in his family moving forward. Would I be seen as a divisive force, or would I become an important part of their lives? One evening, as we sat down to dinner, Jeff finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened," he said quietly, looking at his plate. "I don't know what to do about Addison. She's my daughter, and I love her. But the way she's treated you, it's not something I can overlook. I've never had to choose between you two before, and I hate that I'm in this position. But I need you to know that I won't let her hurt you again." His words were a huge relief, but also a bittersweet realization. I hadn't wanted him to feel like he was being forced to choose between us, but I understood his point of view. I had been hurt, and Addison's actions had crossed a line that no family member should ever cross. Jeff was finally seeing the full extent of the damage, and it was hard for him, but it was also a sign of growth. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't want you to feel like you're choosing between me and her, Jeff. I just want to be respected. I understand that she's your daughter, but I can't keep pretending that her behavior isn't affecting me. If she can't learn to treat me with kindness and respect, then I'm not sure how we can move forward as a family." That night, we made a decision. We would seek family therapy. Jeff was open to the idea, and I was willing to give it a try. We both knew that healing wouldn't be easy, and it would take time, but we were willing to work for it. I had been hesitant about therapy in the past, but I realized that our relationship was worth the effort. And perhaps most importantly, I needed to know if there was any chance of repairing things with Addison. As for Addison, things didn't get much better right away. She resented the fact that Jeff was no longer financially supporting her the way he had before. She accused him of abandoning her, and for a while, it seemed like she might cut him out of her life entirely. But slowly, over time, Jeff's decisions started to sink in. He had drawn a firm line in the sand. Addison had to learn that actions had consequences. Weeks passed. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension even during family therapy. Addison was reluctant to open up, and the therapist had a hard time breaking through her defenses. But we persisted, hoping that eventually, we could find a way to rebuild the relationship. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but it felt like progress. One evening, months after the peanut prank, Addison called Jeff. She was upset, and though she still refused to apologize directly, she expressed some regret for her actions. It was a small step, but it was progress. Slowly, she started to show some maturity, realizing that the world didn't revolve around her. Her relationship with Jeff would never be the same as it was before, but there was hope for healing. As for me, I'm still learning to navigate this new chapter. It's clear that my relationship with Addison will never be perfect, but I've learned to set boundaries for my own well-being. I don't want to be caught in the middle anymore, and I won't tolerate being treated with disrespect. But I'm also trying to understand that healing takes time, and not every relationship can be fixed in an instant. In the end, the story isn't over. Addison and I may never become close friends, but I hope that we can eventually find a place of mutual respect. Jeff and I, despite everything, are stronger than ever. We've had to face tough challenges, but together, we've found a way to move forward. And while I don't know exactly what the future holds, I'm confident that whatever happens, we'll face it as a family, albeit a very unconventional one.